here's what I'm interested in. What if, when Graham Plattner came to Washington, D.C. to meet with the Senate Minority Leader and all these other people, someone there was taking detailed notes and they decided to write a book? It's not so much what insider conversations talk about, it's about what ends up happening. It can sound salacious.
What are you talking about?
It can sound really, really provocative, but
what
it
are you
has
talking
no
about?
actual merit in the end.
The Department of Justice has not moved whatsoever on going after any of the people who are in these files. They've covered it up. They have thousands of pages of redactions.
Is that a cover-up, or is there no prosecutable crime here?
This is not how you behave when they're innocent.
We have to go, and I think just to Tara's point, if there's one thing that you take away from all of the reporting in this story, it's at the highest levels of DOJ, their top priority as it relates to the Epstein files was protecting the president.
Right.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're diving into a CNN panel that got genuinely tense, and it centers on the fallout from a bombshell report about closed-door meetings over the Epstein files. On one side, you've got Tara Setmayer, Abby Phillip, Keith Boykin, and Ashley Allison pressing hard on why top officials were huddling in the most secure room in the building. On the other, you've got Arthur, an attorney with a front-row seat, trying to explain away a Florida prison meeting and a very convenient transfer. Things get sharp fast. Stick around all the way through, because the strongest exchange doesn't come until the panel starts connecting the dots, and you do not want to miss how that lands. And while you're here, drop a comment and let me know where in the world you're tuning in from. I always love seeing how far this community reaches. All right, let's get into it.
The vice president thought it was a real thing and thought that it was effectively, I think the quote was, this is going to, or Dan Bongino said this, he said, this is going to be the president's Iran-Contra. Part of the reason Dan Bongino would say something like this is because they literally brought the conspiracy theorists into the White House.
As Noah said, he is an extremely online person, as is the president of the United States. It makes a lot of sense that he'd have interest in this. But all of this gives me very much so like Russiagate vibes. The reality is that the president wasn't a Russian asset. He was never the Manchurian president. But he certainly seemed to act like it. He was obsessed with the story in the same way that his critics were obsessed with kind of promulgating these conspiracy. He fed it and gave it energy. And I think the behavior of the administration with respect to the Epstein scandal, which I think quite honestly is driven primarily by speculation, by this belief that there must be some deeper story here, when in fact that this is something that has occurred across multiple administrations, across multiple political parties. The reality is that if there was any sort of criminal conduct in these files related to the president of the United States, the current one, we would have known about it already.
Okay.
Everything leaks.
So
it hasn't happened.
So wait a minute,
wait either. I mean, part of what you get from the story is that they were desperate to find out if there was stuff about Trump.
Stuff that was perhaps
so they were like, we've got to figure out if he's implicated here, and they dug through it.
Right. With all due respect, the Russiagate comparison, I think, doesn't hold up because Robert Mueller in the Mueller report said that there was some problems here going on. Maybe the term collusion isn't really a legal one, but there were some issues there, and he was hoping that the Congress would take it up through, or it would go through a legal process once Trump got out of office. So that was that. And unfortunately, because of the Attorney General and all kinds of different things, they decided not to do that. But we can't just absolve him from whatever was going on with the Russians. So there's that. Now, as far as Epstein is concerned, the guy's name is in the Epstein files thousands of times. He was best friends with him for years. He was on his plane with him. They were involved in all kinds of things.
But the evidence of criminal conduct.
There are 2.5 million. There are 2.5 million files that still have not been released. And if Pam Bondi and Dan Bongino and Kash Patel and all the people in the Situation Room, which is where you usually go when you need things to be really, really, really secure, why are they going to the Situation Room?
Vibes here.
No, because they're concerned about what did the president know? How much did he know and why? Is he legally culpable? We don't know. But he all has his minions in the Department of Justice who are covering this for him.
I have to agree with you.
This is not how you behave when you're innocent.
It's a very long article, which I also found somewhat entertaining just for like the gossip value of it, right? Like Bongino calling Pam Bondi Blondie, berating her in front of everybody and telling her, you fucked this up from the beginning. I mean, that was kind of glorious. But I
most
also
humiliating
got
way,
out of it that, and how much they wanted her gone, right? I also got out of it just how different J.D. Vance's take is within the administration from some of the people that are surrounding Trump, like Susie Wiles. He is obviously plugged in to the MAGA sphere and the manosphere in a way that some of the political folks that are around Trump are
really
not.
not surprising for a vice
honestly,
president.
if they had listened to him at the beginning and just released the files instead of doing all the other shenanigans, I actually think this might have ended up differently. They didn't listen to him.
It's almost like he's running for president in 2028.
Okay, let me just stop you right here, because Tara Setmayer said something that most people scroll right past, and it is the whole ball game. She pointed out that this name shows up in the files thousands of times, that these two were best friends for years, that they were on the plane together. And I want you to sit with that number for a second. Not once, not twice, thousands. You don't accidentally land in a document thousands of times. That is not a coincidence. That is a pattern, and patterns tell you something. But here's the part that blows my mind. Tara connected it to where this all went down. She asked, why on earth are these officials running into the Situation Room? You have to understand what that room is. That is the most secure space in the entire building, the place reserved for genuine national security emergencies. And they used it to sweat over one question. What did the president know? How much did he know? And is he legally exposed? Think about that. If there is nothing there, you do not need the most locked down room in the country to talk about it. And then she landed the line that I cannot stop thinking about. Tara said that's not how you behave when you're innocent. Thank you. Innocent people release the files. Innocent people say look for yourself. Guilty energy hides, delays, redacts, and panics. And honestly, the funniest part, Ana Navarro brought up the reporting about one official calling another one blondie and berating her in front of everyone. That is not a team that's confident. That is a team turning on itself.
Enough time has passed that we now know that if there had been any evidence, if there had been any of these details,
J.D. Vance wouldn't have
come
made that recommendation.
Forward.
Not
but
true.
Here's what I'm interested in. What if, when Graham Plattner came to Washington, D.C. to meet with the Senate Minority Leader and all these other people, someone there was taking detailed notes and they decided to write a book? It's not so much what insider conversations talk about, it's about what ends up happening. It can sound salacious.
What are you talking
It can
about?
sound really, really provocative,
Horace,
but
what
it
are you
has
talking
no
about?
actual merit in the end.
The Department of Justice has not moved whatsoever on going after any of the people who are in these files. They've covered it up. They have thousands of pages of redactions.
don't agree with that.
Is that a cover-up, or is there no prosecutable crime here?
This is not how you behave when they're innocent.
We have to go, and I think just to Tara's point, if there's one thing that you take away from all of the reporting in this story, it's at the highest levels of DOJ, their top priority as it relates to the Epstein files was protecting the president.
Right, not
Pam Bondi,
That's right.
Deputy Attorney General,
That does not
Todd
shock
Blanche,
me.
and that is not their
That's
job.
not their job. Their job
is
was to
not
protect the survivors.
It's not to
How about
protect the
that?
president. Their job is to
What
protect
happened in
the
Bill
survivors,
Gates?
the
What happened in Bill
victims.
Gates'
so,
testimony today,
yeah,
saying
we
that
gotta go.
that Epstein was trying to extort him through knowing about his infidelity, to me is more relevant because it might explain how the hell Epstein got all that money. Blackmail.
No, one
All right,
of
we
these
got a lot
people
more to
was a
learn on
line
this.
prosecutor.
Do you think that Blanche is going to actually face a tough confirmation process?
No, I do not. I think the Republicans at the end of the day are going to rally around him and confirm him as Attorney General. I think that's wrong for the country because he was Donald Trump's personal lawyer. Now, look, we've had attorneys general of all different kinds, right? Bobby Kennedy was the president's brother. There have been an attorney general went to prison. But what Todd Blanche has demonstrated already, he has the qualifications. No question, he was a top lawyer, top prosecutor in New York. He doesn't have the character, okay? Pam Bondi essentially made a confession by saying that it was Epstein, it was Blanche who handled the Epstein files. She was really a show horse. He was the workhorse. So the work of this Justice Department over the first year and a half was really Todd Blanche's. And time again, when Donald Trump's personal interests are at stake, and they conflict with the nation's interest, like this slush fund, like the tax settlement with the Trump family and companies, he goes with his client, Donald Trump.
I work in the community where Todd was a U.S. attorney in the Southern District. I didn't know him personally then. I did have an encounter with him when he was representing the president in the courthouse. But he does enjoy amongst his colleagues an excellent reputation for his integrity, his knowledge of the law.
Now this is where it stops being gossip and starts being serious. Tara Setmayer said the Department of Justice has not moved whatsoever on going after any of the people named inside these files, and that they've covered it up. And here's what people don't realize. Doing nothing is a choice. Sitting on thousands of pages and redacting them into oblivion is not neutral. That is the action. Silence is a decision someone signed off on, and Abby Phillip put the bow on it perfectly. She said the one takeaway from all this reporting is that at the highest levels of the Justice Department, their top priority was protecting the president. And then she said the thing that should make every single American, left or right, sit up straight. That is not their job. Let me break down why this matters. The Justice Department does not belong to one man. It belongs to you. It's funded by your taxes to pursue justice without fear or favor. The moment it becomes a personal shield, it stops being justice and starts being a service. Here's a little history that makes this land harder. This exact fear is why, after the scandals of the 1970s, the country built walls between the White House and the DOJ on purpose. Those guardrails exist because we already learned what happens without them. And Terry Moran cut right through the noise on the character question. He said this man has the qualifications, no question, but he doesn't have the character. Then he called out what Bondi basically confessed, that she was the show horse and he was the workhorse behind the files. Wow, that is a colleague telling you where the bodies are.
I don't know how Todd Blanche covered up for Donald Trump regarding the Epstein files. There may be ways that the Epstein files came out that people aren't happy with, but I don't think that's one of them.
I can tell you how he covered up for him. Todd Blanche went down to Florida and met with Ghislaine Maxwell.
My client. Ghislaine Maxwell, my
met with
client.
her in prison, and then mysteriously she ends up in a lower security prison in Texas. But that does not.
But you said at the time, Arthur, that you thought that was basically a quid pro quo.
Let me just be very clear. I don't know that for a fact. I want to make that blatantly clear. I've spoken to Ghislaine not that long ago. First of all, people get moved within the system all the time. They just moved Keith Raniere, who's doing 120 years to a less restrictive.
But you basically said, I mean, let's you know, I believe you. I believe you when you say maybe you don't know firsthand exactly what transpired in that conversation. But you basically said that no one would avail their client in a situation like that unless they were getting something out of it, and that the move from a high security prison to a low security prison would be. I'll use your words. A common sense outcome.
Let me just make it clear. I did not represent Ghislaine on the conversations with Todd. We did her appeal. But yes, I'm not going to bring any client in to see any prosecutor unless I know there's some benefit for my client.
I mean, is that ethical?
Of course it's the way the system works.
Tell me,
what do you mean it's not ethical? It's the way it works every day.
Is that ethical in the context of the crimes that she was convicted of?
And that's what I was going to say. That's
the real question.
Moving from one prison for 20 years to another prison for 20 years.
To a low security prison that she is actually not supposed to be in.
Well, let me just say this. Todd Blanche probably does know the law really well. But his application of the law is, I think, what is in question right now. And we all know there are different types of lawyers out here, just like there are different types of salespeople out there. Some sell snake oil, and some sell actually real goods that are going to help.
Like coconut oil.
Coconut oil. Right?
Coconut.
We were talking about.
Coconut oil.
Very funny, Arthur. But I think a couple of things. One, Pam Bondi making this omission or this basically confession that Todd Blanche was over the Epstein files. One. Clearly a woman scorned. She's pissed, right? And so she's like, I'm letting everybody know where the body's buried. And actually, I believe that because if you've ever worked with the DOJ in an administration, you do know the AG and the DAG actually do have separate portfolios. And while they do confer, a lot of times they move policy separately. So the strong likelihood that the DAG probably actually, meaning the Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche, actually was leading on the Epstein files and covered up, which makes, though, the point about his character as the Attorney General even more questionable.
Okay, this section is the one that made my jaw drop, and I need you to pay close attention. Keith Boykin laid out a timeline that you cannot unhear. He said this top official flew down to Florida, sat down with the incarcerated witness, and then mysteriously she gets moved to a lower security facility. Now, maybe that's a coincidence, but here's what I've learned about coincidences that all point in the same direction. They usually aren't coincidences. And what makes it devastating is that it wasn't a partisan pundit making the leap. It was Arthur, the witness's own attorney, who said plainly that he would never bring a client in front of a prosecutor unless he knew there was a benefit for that client. He tried to frame it as just the way the system works, and that's when Abby Phillip delivered the surgical strike. She asked, is that ethical in the context of what she was convicted of? And that context is everything, because a favorable transfer is one thing when it's a low-level case. It's a very different thing when the person holds information the public is desperate to see. And this is the part I really want you to understand. Ashley Allison made the sharpest observation of the whole panel. She said the reason we're even hearing this is a woman's scorn, that Bondi is essentially letting everyone know where the bodies are buried. Think about what that means. This isn't leaking from the outside. This is coming from inside the tent. When your own former boss starts naming who ran the operation, that's not a rumor, that's a witness. And here's the takeaway nobody can spin. When the people sworn to protect the public spend their energy protecting one person instead, trust doesn't just crack, it collapses. And that damage doesn't hit one party. It hits every single one of us who still wants to believe the law applies equally. So what do you guys think of this? Leave your thoughts down in the comments. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.